Hello and welcome to another Redacted Nuisance, that 10 to 15 minutes of craziness on Tinternet, where I, Dr. J, use they as pronoun, ramble on for about 10 to 15 minutes. Don't listen back to it and just throw it up on the internet. And it is called Redacted Nuisance because if I called it Queer Nuisance, there'd be a number of people who would not be able to listen to this, be due to censorship issues and the need for some people to closet and to hide who they are. So actually, that's what I'll mutter on with this episode. One of the suggestions from a colleague this week, when I was talking about the upcoming toilet bills and things like that within the UK, and how that makes me feel very vulnerable being out in public. That makes me feel very vulnerable being in spaces like changing rooms and things like that. And especially, we both work for a consultancy and going to client side. And I said, this is making me feel very stressed. And they were like, you realize you can just go back in the closet. You realize you can hide who you are and hide your non-binariness, hide your transness, and go back in the closet, which is a privilege in a way that a lot of people don't have. And yes, it is a privilege. Well, yes, it is a privilege. I can skate under the radar in a number of ways. However, the more I try to look normative, the more the things that are not normative about me, about my body, stand out. So I can't appear cis very easily. The more I try to dress normative, the less bright colours, craziness I wear, the more, and whether I try to go femme and wear women's clothing or mask and wear more men's clothing, it becomes very obvious that I don't fit either role. And that dissonance then raises questions in people's minds, which then outs me very, very quickly. And I've dealt with this for all of my life. So when I first arrived in the UK, I tried to suit and boot. I did the typical butch lesbian styling of wearing vests and waistcoats and shirts and trousers and three-piece suits and tried to look and ties and tried to look masculine in a particular way, and all that it highlights is that I have a very soft face. I don't have any hard edges on my face, and so I look like, well, for a lot of it, I look like an overgrown 14-year-old. It makes me look very young. It makes me look pre-testosterone, which which is kind of obvious, like a pre a it makes me look like a young man or a young boy on the edge of puberty, on the edge of going through that testosterone fuel puberty. I don't have the definitive markers on my face that say, hey, this person has gone through puberty. I don't have a lot of facial hair. I don't have a lot of the angles that you tend to gain when you're on testosterone. There's particular angles that grow into your face. I don't have any of that. I have a very soft face, which means that I look young, which means that if I suit and boot, I literally look like a teenager on work experience. Now, this is really, it's wonderful. Everyone's like, yeah, you look young. It's great unless you're the principal consultant and you need to walk in the room and be like, hi, I'm the person that you're paying quite a large amount of money to come and do this consultancy piece on. And people look at me and are like, are you on work experience? Are you actually do you match this description that I've had of you, this job description? So people don't tend to see a picture of us when we go out. They just get a description. Jay is a principal consultant. They're a service designer. They're a business analyst. They know all of this stuff. They're very good at this. People are like, yeah, and they expect a particular type of person to walk in. I come walking in all of my brightness and my colours and my craziness and tattoos and all of this stuff, which basically screams not the normative person you're expecting. And that means that people are like, oh, I'm going to get something really different here. This person is obviously slightly different, and there's going to be some challenges for me. Um, and most people are cool with that. And in fact, it took me a while to understand this, but somebody said, a lovely person who was mentoring me said one of the things that people see when I walk in is that they're not going to get the standard routine from a consultant. I'm very clearly bringing something different to the table. So lean into that and stop trying to be like everyone else and lean into the fact that you're different, which I've done for much of the last 10 years or more. To think about how I would go back to being more normative actually was hugely stressful, because it then became all of these all of this work to look different and to be different and to be seen as different would suddenly disappear, and then it becomes those small micro things. I'm not masculine enough to wear men's suits in a way that allows me to be read as very masc. I come across very effeminate. I mean, I'm more Quentin Crisp than anything else when I'm wearing a suit. I am flamboyant and effeminate in many ways. When I wear dresses or women's clothing or more feminine clothing, that my masculinity comes through. The fact that I have broad shoulders and no hips and have wild gestures and a loud voice and all of these things means I don't come across as feminine. And it's those small things that suddenly blow your whole disguise. Hi, I'm part of your normativeness apart. And then that leads to a lot more questions and a lot more, well, if you're hiding this, what else are you hiding? If you're nervous about this, what else are you nervous about? Whereas I've found being able to walk in being myself, being comfortable, being this loud, vibrant, not quite one, not quite t'other type person allows me to be this wild, experimental person. And people look at me and go, oh, I'm getting something different here. And this person's really open and really honest and really on it. And that to me is kind of such an amazing thing. And I've built a lot of my late career around that openness and that being able to walk in and just be myself. And I know that I'm not the only person having to sit here and have this internal discussion, which is essentially, do I go for safety? And effectively, and I'm going to use the word detransition, effectively go back in a closet, hide my gender identity, hide my gender expression, hide my sexuality, hide a lot of who I am for safety? Or do I continue being myself with the recognition that that is inherently unsafe in the current environment in particular ways? And that's a really, really terrible decision to have to make. And my heart bleeds for anyone who's having to sit there and go, you know, it's going to be so much easier to cut my hair short, to grow up my facial hair and just wear men's clothing and go back in the closet. Or for somebody who's trans feminine or for somebody who's trans masculine, go, yeah, I'm going to grow my hair. I'm going to try to do the thing that makes me, that I hate doing, and I'm going to feel uncomfortable every day, and I'm going to go in and be read as a woman or be read as feminine. And my heart bleeds for people who are making those decisions for their safety. And honestly, we don't make those decisions because we don't want to be who we are. We make those decisions because being who we are is unsafe, and it is safer not to be ourselves than it is to be ourselves. And I'm in the privileged position where I believe that I can be myself and maintain my safety and maintain, so I can have this queerness, I can have this identity, I can have this whole notion of who I am and be myself sometimes in very establishment environments. I'm about to go to something tonight where I'm walking into a very establishment environment. I've already planned my fit. It involves multiple patterns, the brightest colours. It involves nail polish that is vibrant, hair that is freshly minted, and I will walk in there being myself, which is fascinating to do because if I walk in there being myself and it's not safe, I know that I can just leave. But also I know that by walking in there being myself, most people go, "Oh, hello, you're very bright and vibrant," and I'll be hello, which is generally how I greet people. Hello, um, and it allows people to go, "Ah, you're weird, but you're interesting," which is generally the vibe I'm going for. Weird but interesting. I'd rather be weird but interesting than boring. I also know the mental health payment that I make to be normative, to try to be normative, to try to be read as normative. I know the cost of that to myself, and quite frankly, I don't want to pay it.